Right, well thanks very much for talking to me today, Phil.
Pleasure.
So how long has Nick's Timber been trading in Gloucester?
Well, it's been incorporated on this site as a limited company since 1856. That's 164 years, which we think we are now probably the oldest continually owned family business in the city.
Ah, a long time then.
A long time.
Long time. Okay, and obviously we're all suffering at the moment, but has the coronavirus impacted Nick's Timber business at all?
Massively, but I have to say, ironically, in a very positive way.
Ah.
When the news first broke, we thought, oh, here we go, this is going to be a nightmare. But then we realised that we were an essential trade, and therefore we could stay open. We didn't need to close the gates. So we took it on a week-by-week basis and stayed open, and of course as all the other bigger players closed their gates, Travis, Jewson's, Wickes, B&Q, more and more business poured into those of us that were remaining open. So we've actually ridden a 16-week period of high levels of activity, which has meant sort of 12 to 18-hour days for my team here. But it's been a very positive thing for us, and I think actually it's woken up the population of Gloucester to us as a company again, because I think we were perceived as being trade only, and with all the B&Qs and the DIY shops closing, obviously Joe Public has come back through the gates to buy materials from us, and they've suddenly realised what we are and what we do and how good we are at it and the selection that we keep. And as such, even though B&Q, Wickes and others have reopened their doors, I have to say the level of activity hasn't really diminished. So I'm really pleased that we're back servicing the population as well as servicing the commercial sector.
Oh, that's great news.
Yeah,
that really is good news, yes. So how many people do you employ here at Gloucester?
Now we're down to about 25. At our height, pre the 2008 financial crash, we were 50 on this site. But with modern technology, computers and everything else, we're operating now on a staff of 25.
All right. Has what you produce changed much over the years?
I think if you go back in history, why is Nick's here? Gloucester was the furthest inland timber port in the UK for many years, because of the Severn Canal and the ability to bring ocean-going ships up from Sharpness. So when I first came to Gloucester in the sort of late 80s, there were 11 timber companies along the canal, all backing onto the water, and we were bringing in timber at that time from different countries than we bring it in now, and in a different way. Then the boats would come up, literally dock on the back of the site here on the canal, and would be unloaded directly into our yards. When the dockhead was developed in the city as a more leisure orientated dock area, the ability to bring those boats up stopped, and that changed everything that we do and how we did it. So it all comes in by road now from the major ports, Hull and such like. And building has changed, the products have changed. We now don't sell any sawn wood, everything's machined and kiln dried and to a certain grade and standard. DIY obviously has been a major thing over the last 50 years, and new products are being developed for the DIY sector. Decking wasn't around 20 years ago.
Well, no.
Now we sell miles of the stuff. So it's an ever-changing picture on demand. It's an ever-changing picture on supply, and that's just the way it works.
Oh, that's interesting. I can remember the huge ships myself as a boy coming down the canal, and as you say, there were a lot of them, and they were absolutely enormous. You wondered how they managed to get round the little bends in the canal.
Well, that's it, and that was the problem. They have to go into the dockhead in the docks to turn to go back down. They can't turn where they are. So with their inability to do that because of the pleasure crafts and stuff that are in the docks, we've lost that ability. But I mean, the company I worked for when I first came to Gloucester, Williams and Farmer, which was then at Monk Meadow, they actually bought the last boat in. So I actually was witness to the last offloading of the last vessel into our yard at Williamson Farmer.
Oh, fascinating!
Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating. Yes. Okay. I suppose the next thing is where does your wood actually come from?
Again, this has changed dramatically. If you go back to the 80s, we'll let that one go by. If you go back to the 80s, sort of 7 million cubic metres a year was coming in from Canada. Canada now, very little material is coming in from Canada.
Oh.
The majority of our material, and it's partly because we joined the EEC, we joined Europe as a market, but the majority of our material now comes from the European states in softwood terms. So Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Germany, Latvia, Ukraine. So that's where most of the softwood material comes from. In hardwood terms, it comes from Africa, Asia, and obviously in sheet material terms, again, all over the world. So China is now a major player in plywood manufacturing.
Is it?
And they were not around at all in that game 15, 20 years ago. Now they're probably bringing in 70% of what comes in is coming in from China. So it's an ever developing and changing, and by definition therefore interesting industry to be involved in.
Yeah, well, I certainly hadn't realised that China was involved to that amount.
Oh yeah.
Oh, right. You have a large timber mill here.
Yes.
I believe. What does that actually do?
It's probably the best kept secret in the city, actually, that there is a timber mill in Nix's. There's a downside to actually being in a city where every single person that drives past your gates has always driven past their gates their entire life, because we've been here so long that we're older than anybody else in the city that's alive. And if you've been driving past these gates since you were 1 and 2 and 3 years of age, you tend not to turn your head. It's just part of the environment you're in, and therefore the perception by the populace probably is that we're just here, and they don't really know what we do or to what extent we operate a mill or treatment tanks or manufacturing items even. We've had to diversify over the years greatly here in order to survive, and now what we've ended up as being the only remaining timber company, puerile timber company out of the 11 that were here 20 years ago, is that we're now the only mill within 75 miles of Gloucester. And it's a fully functioning mill with large moulding machines. Can manufacture any profile, skirtings, architraves, window boards. But we're more of a specialist mill here than we are a production mill. So we're producing more intricate profiles. Everything is done in-house. We produce all our own cutters. We have our own machinists. And from that point of view, we are seriously a one-stop shop for all and anything that is wood. And can do most things that we're asked to do. We very rarely actually, if I would almost say almost never say no. We can always find a way of producing what's required.
So it's quite an asset for Gloucester then.
Massive asset to Gloucester, and we're used by all the majors because of it. So we are contracted to all the major players such as Travis and Jewson's and Bill Base and so forth.
Yeah. The one thing I must admit that I didn't know until a few years back was that you don't just do trade, of course. You have your trade centre there, which is open not just to local builders but to members of the public as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We developed that just after I took over. There was a very small sort of trade shop here when I took the business over, but it was obvious that there was a demand for more products than we did. So we converted our plywood shed at the time into a 10,000 square foot shop. I have to say we didn't really touch it for 15 years, so it was a bit shabby, but in the COVID shutdown when we couldn't let people in, we decided to revamp that, so we've now revamped that completely with a new heating system, a suspended ceiling, better lighting. We've divided it into a shop and a showroom. We're not quite there yet, but the idea that we've been so taken aback by the amount of public that have come in to us during the closure, that we really felt we had to put something that was more user-friendly together for the public. And so we've created a retail environment now here for DIY, and we've developed an app that we will be putting out to every single person that's purchased anything from us in the last 16 weeks as a thank you to their support. And through that app they will be able to come in and contact us by phone through the app, and if they come through the app we'll know it's through the app, and they will get favourable prices, trade rates for DIY projects. So yeah, it's yet again, 164 years in, and we're still having to reinvent ourselves about every 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. Of course, really business is about innovation, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's
if you stand still, you die. So we're constantly looking for the next thing and how best to prepare ourselves to supply that.
Yeah.
The biggest asset I've got here, frankly, is the people.
Oh, right.
I've got staff here that have been with me for 50 years, 45 years, 40 years, 35 years, 30 years, and the knowledge base here is astounding. If you were to add up all the years of experience in my sales office, we're talking over 200 trading years of experience, and that experience is very happily shared with people who come on looking for help and advice on what the best product is for the job they're doing, or what is available to do what they want to do, and even how best to go about doing what they do. And when they need us to recommend carpenters, joiners to do work for them, we're very happy to recommend people that buy their materials from us and we know are good.
That's very, very good. Here's another one. Do Nick's Timber get involved in community projects at all?
We do. As you know, Ed, I'm heavily involved with the arts in the city personally, and I've done a lot of big arts projects for the community. And recently we're on with the Olympus Theatre in Barton Street, which is a massive community project, and will become even a larger community project going forward if we're successful in the purchase of the theatre. So on a personal level, that's where I sit. As a company, we're continually approached by groups to support them with materials for stuff that they need to do but have no money to do, and where we can, we always do step up and sponsor with the supply of goods free of charge or at a greatly reduced price for community efforts, everything from scout troops to nurseries that want a small shed for the garden, for the playhouse, or
marvellous.
Or raised beds for old age people, old age pensioners, community spaces. We're very community orientated.
Oh, right. Well, that's really good to hear that. Well, thank you very much indeed for talking to me.
My pleasure.
And hopefully your company will go on for yet another 160 years.
Hopefully I won't be around to
Probably
do that,
not.
but certainly for the next decade, it'll be pushing forward under my auspices.
Thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.
A lark is singing in the sky, and over the dreaming fields, and over the hedges crowned with May, loud with noise of raiding bees. All else sleeps on. Cold in his form, the hare awaits to hear the cock's first bugle note. Poised like a fluttering star, the light beneath him sees the acres curve their shapes across the countryside. And when he drops to earth, far off he hears the cock at last ring out his stuttering call. And then the hare pricks back his ears as from the smoking cottages the yawning farmer comes to stomp along the lane. to his ploughman caught in sun and mist, whistling to the drowsy horses and the sky. Caught in sun and mist, whistling to the drowsy horses and the sky. A butterfly newborn tries in the air its first unsteady flight, and all along the shining hills the mushrooms heave themselves to dewy light. The squabbling geese march out to storm the morning with their angry cries. In the sky and over the dreaming fields and over the hedges crowned with May, loud with noise of raiding bees. All else sleeps on. Cold in his form the hare awaits to hear the cock's first bugle note. Poised like a fluttering star, the light beneath him sees the acres curve their shapes across the countryside. And when he drops to earth, far off he hears the cock at last ring out his stuttering call. And then the hare pricks back his ears as from the smoking cottages the yawning farmer comes to stomp along the lane, squeezing through each squat stone stile, nods to his ploughman caught in sun and mist, whistling to the drowsy horses and the sky. rise in the air, his first unsteady flight. And all along the shining hills, the mushrooms heave themselves to dewy light. The mulberry trees, the squabbling geese march out to storm the morning with their angry cry. A lark is singing in the sky, and over the dreaming fields, and over the hedges crowned with May, loud with noise of raiding